We want to go live right now to Kalamazoo County Prosecutor Jeff Getting to talk about today's Dalton sentencing.
6 counts of life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was also sentenced to 225 months to 40 years in prison on the assault with intent to commit murder charges, as well as 2 years to be served consecutive for the felony firearm charges. Mr. Dalton will begin his prison sentence in Jackson, Michigan. Everyone who's sentenced to prison in the state of Michigan goes to Jackson first for the purpose of quarantine, classification to determine what prison that he'll be sent to begin serving the remainder of his sentence. Today was a difficult day for a lot of us, but it's one that, although it's been nearly 3 years now, we've worked steadily at accomplishing this goal. The goal always has been, since February 20 of 2016, to be able to stand here today and to say that Mr. Dalton will serve the remainder of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. It's a sentence that is well-deserved, obviously, given the gravity of his actions, the damage that he's caused to these families, to the survivors, and to our community as a whole. As I indicated during the course of the sentencing, arrangements have been made already by the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office to transport Mr. Dalton this afternoon. He'll be on his way to, or he is on his way to Jackson as we speak now today. I don't anticipate that there will be anything further with regard to his case. He does maintain he has some limited appellate rights. He can pursue an appeal by leave of the court, not by right, and only with regard to his guilty plea or sentencing. And we don't anticipate that there are any issues that would raise any cause for concern in an appeal. For all practical purposes, I think that we are now done with Mr. Dalton. Do you all have any questions?
Can you talk about that powerful moment in court today where Tiana Crothers was addressing Jason Dalton, and she repeatedly said, "Look at me," and of course his lawyer spoke up, and you went and spoke to her?
Yeah. All of the survivors, the families of those victims, and Tiana, there's a need, a desire to know why and to have an acknowledgement. Ms. Carruthers was doing absolutely nothing wrong in asking Dalton to look at her. It was a courageous moment for her to stand up to him, right? This was her opportunity to speak to him and to tell him the impact of what he did had on her and her child and those other children that were with her. We can't force the defendant to acknowledge her. We can't force the defendant to say something. And I applaud Tiana for the courage to confront him. That's an amazing thing.
Did it matter at all
now that it's all over?
It's a sense of relief, of excitement to know that we're all done with this. This has been a long time coming, and our survivors, our victims' families have been so patient with us all along the way and so supportive. I can't get over the fact that people come up to myself and Assistant Prosecutor Williams and Rhonda and Stella, our victim advocates, and they're always thanking us, and I always want to say, no, we should be thanking you, because they have been so supportive and patient of this process. 3 years in the making, and we told them at the very beginning that this was going to take a while, but that we needed to do this right. And that if they would be patient, that we would get them to this point. I didn't anticipate 3 years, but they've stayed with us. And I couldn't have asked for more than what they've been willing to give.
So because the case avoided trial, do you, or I wonder, do any of these folks feel like they were cheated out of an explanation from him?
I'll start, and then I'm going to turn it over to them. There was, when there's a place, right, where you wanted to have a trial, where I wanted to stand up and point my finger at him and confront him with the evidence of what he did. But that's a selfish place, right? The outcome of this case, him pleading guilty, protects the case from appellate review in a way that a trial never would have. We are so much better off in such a better place today because of that guilty plea than we ever would have been for a trial. But yeah, selfishly, there was a place where we wanted to go to trial. We were ready to go to trial, but we were far better off not having it. From a victim standpoint, I'm always really careful. I can't put myself in their shoes. I haven't been through this, so I don't speak for them or their feelings, but if any of them want to answer that.
Yeah, I'll say something.
Sure.
Not going through 2 weeks of all of the details, to me was a relief. I know a lot about what happened. I don't know every detail. In a way, I'm relieved not to know every detail. I was prepared to do it. Once you see something, you can't unsee it. So, and there were some things that I was going to see that I really did not want to see or know.
How do you deal with the fact that you may never know why?
I've already dealt with that. I stated that in the courtroom today. He has no remorse, no redemption. So I'm beyond that.
Regarding the question, did we feel cheated? No. He said guilty, that's fine for me. But the why question, I said this in court also. There's no answer that he could ever give, even if it was the truth, that can fully explain why. And I guess it just doesn't matter. All that matters is that he's not going to be with the rest of us ever again. And so that's okay with me.
I'm going to say that I think for most of us, the cheating happened 3 years ago. So the fact that there wasn't a trial doesn't hurt anything or help anything. The cheating happened on February 20th, 2016. This is just the culmination of that cheating.
How do you feel, though, after having spoken to him and getting a chance to look at him? How does that help you? If you don't mind just coming up a little bit closer. Thank you so much.
I'd like to say I feel relieved, but I don't. It's not going to change a lot of what happened. Yes, I addressed him and told him my opinion of the situation and wanted to make sure that he knew that he ruined many, many good lives. But honestly, the way he was sitting there with a very non-committal, I don't care what's going on look on his face meant I felt a lot of it was just washing over him, and he didn't care that he just ruined 6 lives, and totally 2 lives for the rest of their lives, and dozens of other lives indirectly. And I just want to say that Rich and Tyler and Dorothy and Barb, Mary Jo, and my mom are the sunlight, and they're all around us. And Abby and Tiana are the suns, and may they shine for a very, very long time.
Jeff, if maybe you could talk a little bit about the importance of making today about the victims, their families, and getting the opportunity during those victim impact statements to tell Dalton about the people that he took away.
Yeah. The criminal justice system, and one of the things that I do is I meet with the victims' families anytime we have a death case here in Kalamazoo, and I end up telling them the same thing, that the criminal justice system isn't really set up in a way that we're going to help them. My victim advocates do such a fantastic job in this office working with the victims of crimes like these, but still, we're going to kind of compound the tragedy. We're going to drag this out. We're not going to let them move on because we're going to call them every week, every month, and in this case for months and months and months to tell them that the case has been delayed or that there's been this change, and we delay the process for them of being able to confront the person who's hurt them. When we get the chance today, and as I said, I can't speak for the victims, but it seems that it gives people an opportunity not only to, to say what they want to say, but it's an emotional release. It gives you this opportunity to now, you don't ever get over it. You don't ever put it behind you, but it helps to be able to figure out how you're going to live tomorrow. And these days they're incredibly difficult and they're incredibly emotional, but I think they're also incredibly important for the survivors and for the families of those that were killed.
How many written victim impact statements were submitted but not verbalized today?
I don't know the exact number, but several, many.
We have now Dalton and Charles Pickett have both been sentenced. There were two pretty high-profile tragedies for the community at large that happened within a few months of each other in 2016. Just broadly, how do you feel about how the healing effort maybe can start now that we've dealt with those two issues?
Yeah, for the community especially, in general, outside of the victims and their families, being able to have actually now gotten through the trials, the sentencings, the convictions, it allows for the community to move forward, right? To continue to honor those survivors, to continue to honor the victims. We continue to have vigils and we continue to have events around those victims, around those events, and I think that Kalamazoo always will. That's part of the strength of this community. It's part of the heart of this community, is that we're always going to have those persons that were taken from us and injured in our minds, in our hearts, in our souls.
You had said that you hope Dalton would never return to this city. What does it mean to you, any of you, that not only is this journey over, but that he is not going?
The good riddance, right? It's hard to verbalize the idea that cancer is still there, right? He was right down the road over at the sheriff's department, just a couple of miles from here, and so long as he was here, you're not free of that weight. Now we are. Right? Now we are. Now he's gone and should never be back in Kalamazoo for any reason ever again. And that's a good thing. I mean, I'm glad to see him go.
Professionally, is that satisfying for you? I mean, do you see it as your role as prosecutor to kind of expel people like this from your community?
Professionally, the outcome in this case was very satisfying. Expel might not be the word I would use, but seeing him held accountable, there's a great deal of satisfaction in knowing that there's accountability, knowing that there's consequence, knowing that every day he'll go to bed in a prison cell, every day he'll wake up in that same prison cell until he's dead. And that's perfectly fine with me.
Do you have any kind of accounting for the amount of man hours, time, resources that went into this case?
No, it didn't matter. You know, it didn't matter. It never mattered how many people were going to be involved. It never mattered how many hours it was going to take. It never mattered what the cost of something was going to be. It wasn't being kept track of because we would do whatever it took in order to be here today.
Is there a relationship that will continue between the court and the families of the victims?
I think that in some ways they're going to be glad to be rid of us. Because, you know, we're a reminder of something really hard, really awful. But there's been relationships that have developed in this case between Rhonda and Stella and Jeff and the victims' families and between themselves. This is a really tight group of people who have bonded over, you know, something just absolutely awful, but they've made friendships, they've developed relationships with themselves and with our office, and I suspect that that'll continue in some ways as well. Anything else? Anything any of you want to say while you have the moment?
I'll say anything.
Please.
Today is a day that we've all been waiting a very long time for. We've waited nearly 3 years for our family members and our loved ones to finally see justice. And for some of the family members here, we've been waiting a long time for this. There is a sense of relief that we'll see the guilty party locked up for life. He'll never set foot again as a free man. And none of us will have another day where we walk free either. Our lives have been shattered. We've all lost people that were the most dear and precious to us. And we will never walk free. And so it does bring some satisfaction to know that he will not walk free either. I can't say that there's any closure. We hear the word closure all the time, but there's no closure. And even though today was probably, from a legal standpoint, the best outcome that we could hope for, that he would be locked up for life, serve 6 life terms with no chance of parole, that is very satisfying. But there is no closure. We can say goodbye to this chapter of the saga and start looking toward healing. But this is something that has affected our lives that we just never will be free from. I do want to say a personal word of thanks to the prosecutors, Jeff Getting and Jeff Williams, and to the victims' advocates, Stella and Rhonda, and they have given us a lot of support. I'm super grateful for the compassion that they've shown to us families, and the sensitivity that they've shown, their patience as we ask them the difficult why questions. Why is it taking so long? Why are these delays? They patiently explain to us to our satisfaction. And we saw this case really reach the best outcome that we really could have hoped for. So my thanks and good job. Thank you.
I'd like to also add to that I think the community, the Kalamazoo community, we should thank also, because they've really rallied behind us. I think Prosecutor Getting said that, you know, all of us were affected that night, and we all know where we were when we found out about it. And having that support behind us as families who have gone through something horrible, even though it might not always have been spoken outwardly, I felt it internally. So I wanted to say thank you to the Kalamazoo and Battle Creek communities.
Okay. Thank you for your patience with us. It's been a long 3 years now, nearly, and the media, you guys have really done a great job. I appreciate everything that you've done in order to be supportive and respectful of the victims, and our need to not always be able to be as helpful as we could in answering questions. Sometimes there are just things that we can't say in order to protect the case, and all of you have been very respectful of that, and I greatly appreciate it as well. So thank you, and hopefully we won't ever have to do this again.